Greetings from
Arirang TV's AI anchor Arirang delivers issues from Korea and abroad twice a day. Discover major news that's making headlines in various fields such as economy, security, and society. AI Headline News brings not only news, but also an innovative AI media experience to viewers around the world. Focusing on the untold events in diplomacy between Korea and other countries. Ambassadors from around the world share the stories so that all viewers can follow along even without prior historical knowledge. Discover what goes on behind the scenes of diplomacy and reflect on the significance of international relations and the value of history. One day, one K culture. K-Trend captures cultural exchanges and trends in and outside Korea. K-People delves into the stories of individual lives. K-Story introduces noteworthy works. And K-Stage shares the beauty of tradition and modernity. Immerse yourself in a new episode of K-Culture every day. A new concept music show that combines performances and fan interaction. Simply K-pop SNS. From performances by K-pop idols to stories they've never shared before on camera. Discover not only their talent, but also who they are outside the spotlight. Enjoy their musical growth alongside behind-the-scenes stories.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
Policy briefings to President Lee Jae-myung continue, with today's garnering attention as they focus on the justice system reform to diversify the prosecution center system. Plus, the Foreign Affairs and Unification Ministries share their vision to the president. As widely expected, the Bank of Japan raises its short-term key interest rate from 0.5% to 0.75%, its highest rate in 30 years. We break it down and see what this means for South Korea amid a weakened won. It's the most wonderful time of the year, with Christmas less than a week away. What's in line for events for this year's holiday season in South Korea? We have our culture correspondent to help us finish the year strong. Good evening, welcome to Newscenter. We begin with the policy briefing. South Korea's justice system is facing a major overhaul as the government presses ahead with sweeping prosecutorial reform. President Lee Jae-myung and justice officials laid out a roadmap during a live policy briefing on Friday, addressing both institutional change and concerns over maintaining public trust. Our Moon Hae-ryun starts us off.
Prosecutorial reform took center stage at Friday's live broadcast policy briefing by the Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Prosecutor's Office, with President Lee Jae-myung opening the session by stressing the fundamental role of the law enforcement system in upholding the nation's legal order.
국가의 법 질서 유지를 위해서 국가 공권력을 최종적으로 행사하는 매우 중요한 기관입니다. 그렇기 때문에 최대한 절차적으로 정당해야 되고 결과도 역시 정당해야 됩니다.
Following the president's remarks, the justice minister pledged to push ahead with prosecutorial reform in line with public expectations, vowing to carry out institutional changes without setbacks.
We will actively support the work of the Prosecutorial Reform Task Force under the Prime Minister's Office to ensure that the ongoing establishment of the Prosecution Office and the Serious Crimes Investigation Office proceeds smoothly, while also preventing any weakening of the state's overall capacity to respond to crime.
The minister added that prosecutors' roles would shift away from investigations and toward broader public interest functions, including recovering criminal proceeds, strengthening international criminal justice cooperation, supporting international legal and trade matters, and representing the public interest in litigation. The Supreme Prosecutor's Office, in its own briefing, said it has already reduced the overall volume of investigations to focus resources on cases directly affecting people's livelihoods.
We have made every effort to strictly punish crimes that undermine people's livelihoods, including serious industrial accidents and price-fixing cases involving essential goods.
Looking ahead, he said prosecutors will intensify efforts to confiscate illegal profits from mass victim crimes like voice phishing and swiftly return them to victims, while developing technologies to detect and analyze emerging crimes involving artificial intelligence and deepfakes, and expanding prosecutors' public interest roles. Under the Lee administration's reform blueprint, the prosecution-led system would be dismantled through a full separation of investigation and prosecution. Prosecutors would lose direct investigative powers and focus on indictments and maintaining prosecutions under a new prosecution office within the Justice Ministry, while serious crimes would be investigated by a newly created Serious Crimes Investigation Office and the police as primary investigative bodies. With the abolition of the Supreme Prosecutor's Office scheduled for October next year, eyes are on how the administration translates its reform blueprint into a functioning criminal justice system. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Now, President Lee Jae-myung had another policy briefing from the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Unification. He took the chance to reveal his vision on diplomacy and North Korea policy. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
남북 관계를 요새 제가 들여다보면 그런 느낌이 들어요. 진짜 원수가 된 것 같습니다.
This was how President Lee Jae-myung said he viewed the current mood on the peninsula, as he was briefed on Friday by the chiefs in charge of foreign affairs and North Korea policy.
북한이 전 분계선에 걸쳐서 삼중 철책을 치고 다리를 끊고 도로를 끊고 옹벽을 쌓고 이런 경우가 처음이라는 겁니다. 수십 년 만에. 북한은 혹시 남쪽이 북침하지 않을까 이 걱정을 해가지고.
He said that political motivation is to blame, mentioning the hardline approach by the previous administration. With Pyongyang rejecting outright calls for dialogue, Lee called for efforts by the Unification Ministry.
남북 간에 소통하고 또 대화하고 협력하고 공존 공영의 길을 가야 되는데 지금은 바늘구멍 하나도 여지가 없습니다. 인내심을 가지고 선제적으로 주도적으로 남북 간의 적대가 완화될 수 있도록.
The Unification Minister stressed the need to relieve sanctions against the North.
In reality, sanctions against North Korea have become ineffective. The backyard for trade with China, which accounts for 90% of its trade, is widely open, and the North sees sanctions as the most hostile act.
On diplomacy surrounding the peninsula,
Next year, we will make sure to hold another South Korea-U.S. summit in a timely manner and reaffirm follow-up measures to what's been agreed at the top level, in particular in nuclear-powered submarines, nuclear energy, and shipbuilding.
the foreign minister added that arrangements will be made for President Lee's state visit to China early next year and vowed to continue top-level diplomacy with Japan. President Lee also instructed his officials to speed up introducing mail-in and electronic voting systems for overseas Koreans.
비행기 타고 무슨 6시간 가서 투표를 했니 무슨 차 타고 1박 2일로 가서 투표를 했니 그러고 있잖아요. 그러지 않게 해야죠. 어쨌든 그건 국가의 책임이라고 생각이 됩니다.
When it comes to public access to information, he was critical of the government restricting South Koreans' access to North Korea's state media Dodong Shinmun, saying that granting the access wouldn't make people turn into communists or pro-North Koreans. Yoo Jung-min, Arirang News.
The Overseas Korean Agency has laid out its blueprint for 2026, aiming to overhaul how South Korea supports its 7.5 million strong diaspora. And this includes both Korean nationals living overseas and foreign citizens who have Korean background. From a new digital database to ID numbers for ethnic Koreans living overseas, the focus is on practical changes. Our Cha Yun-kyung has the details.
Entering its third year, the Overseas Koreans Agency is shifting gears, moving from simple support to a more systematic, data-driven approach. Commissioner Kim Kyung-hyo unveiled the agency's 2026 work plan, emphasizing the need for a comprehensive digital diaspora database.
The environment surrounding diaspora policy is by no means easy. We lack a systematic understanding of the status of our compatriots worldwide, and institutional limitations still prevent citizens abroad from fully exercising their sovereign rights.
A key hurdle has been identifying and supporting foreign nationals of Korean descent who are eligible for support from the agency because of their heritage. To bridge this gap, the agency is reviewing a new authentication system.
We plan to review an overseas Korean authentication system for foreign nationals. By assigning a unique ID number, we can link them to support standards and online services, enabling systematic policy assistance.
As for 2026 as a whole, on top of solidifying the policy foundation through the new diaspora database and enhancing practical rights, it also prioritizes strengthening global networks, expanding inclusive policies for returnees, and finally, overhauling the pan-government framework to streamline support. Another major project is the inclusive returnee policy, something the agency has been focusing on since its foundation. This initiative targets ethnic Koreans from historical migration backgrounds, such as Koryoin and Saklein Koreans, viewing their successful settlement not just as welfare, but as a boost to national competitiveness. As of the end of 2024, more than 860,000 ethnic Koreans have moved to Korea from their respective countries, staying with the special visa for them.
The state will never forget those who contributed to the motherland during its darkest times. We will strengthen support for their stable settlement and heal historical wounds through continued policy consideration.
The agency is looking into boosting resettlement support through education and job training. It aims to finalize these systems by 2026, turning the diaspora policy into a key driver for South Korea's future. 차윤경, Arirang News.
In Japan, the central bank has raised its benchmark interest rate to its highest since 1995 as part of efforts to rein in inflation. Park Jun-han covers the rise and its potential ripple effects.
As widely expected, the Bank of Japan on Friday decided to raise its short-term key interest rate from 0.5% to 0.75%. This 0.25 percentage point increase is the first since the bank raised its key rate in January this year, and is also the first since Sanai Takaichi became Japan's prime minister in October. The decision puts Japan's current key rate at its highest level in 30 years and 3 months. The Bank of Japan raised rates citing the likelihood of wages and prices continuing to rise moderately. A Japanese interest rate decision has a big impact on global asset markets, as a rise can cause what is called a yen carry trade unwind, meaning that investors stop borrowing cheap Japanese yen to buy high-yield foreign assets.
Japan has long maintained ultra-low, even negative, interest rates. This allowed investors to borrow cheaply in Japan and invest overseas, earning profits even from simple deposits. The so-called yen carry trade was widely used by global funds, including in South Korea. But as rates rise, borrowing capacity shrinks, and existing trades lose profitability. That could trigger asset sell-offs, leading to sharp declines in asset prices and higher interest rates.
Another economics professor also pointed to the potential impact on South Korea's asset markets.
Low-interest yen loans that flowed overseas could start to unwind. Funds would likely move out of markets like South Korea and back into Japan. That could pressure Korean stocks and trigger sell-offs in Korean bonds, so the impact on Korea's financial markets could be significant.
Meanwhile, the Bank of Japan has stated that it could raise interest rates further if prices rise steadily above 2% and wages also increase. It believes current monetary conditions remain supportive and plans to gradually adjust policy in response to price and economic developments to ensure the stable achievement of its inflation target. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Now in South Korea, producer prices, which suggest future inflation trends, rose for the third consecutive month in November. This was largely driven by the weak Korean won and strong demand for semiconductors. So how are prices that businesses charge consumers in the coming months affected? Our Yoon Jin has the answers.
As the Korean won remains weak and demand for semiconductors is strong, producer prices in November rose for the third consecutive month. According to preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday, the producer price index recorded 121.31 for November. This marks a 0.3% gain month-on-month, following a 0.4% increase in September and 0.3% in October. Producer prices are a statistical measure of price changes in goods and services supplied by local producers to the domestic market, which is why it serves as a key indicator of future consumer inflation. Data showed prices of agricultural, forestry, and fishery products, in fact, fell 2.1% in November from the previous month, while gas, water, and electricity prices also dropped 0.4%. However, prices of industrial goods rose 0.8% month-on-month. Those of computers, electronic, and optical equipment increased 2.3%. And coal and petroleum products rose 5%. The 5% jump was the largest since September 2023, when prices jumped 6.9%. The head of the BOK's price statistics team, Lee Moon-hee, explained that although global crude oil prices fell, the appreciation of the won against the dollar and rising refining costs combined to drive petroleum products prices higher. He further explained the impact of the exchange rate on producer prices, as increases in the prices of imported raw materials or intermediate items can raise domestic production costs, thereby indirectly causing upward pressure on producer prices. The data show the domestic supply price index, which accounts for both producer and import prices, added 0.7% month on month in November. 이은진, Arirang News.
Trade between North Korea and China rebounded in November to its highest level in 6 years. North Korean monitoring website NK News, citing the Chinese Customs Service reported that bilateral trade hit $281 million last month. This amount is the highest since October 2019, when trade totaled $287 million. China exported various machinery to the regime in recent months, including medical devices and agricultural machinery. Notably, a vehicle banned from being traded under UN Security Council resolutions was also found to have been transferred to North Korea. Christmas is just around the corner, less than a week to go, making it the perfect time to soak up the winter atmosphere. Downtown Seoul is packed with winter events. And if you want to know more, we have our culture correspondent Park Gun-woo in the studio. Who else would we ask? Happy Friday, Gun-woo.
Happy Friday, Doyan.
Now, take it away for us, please.
So, Doyan, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
I had a feeling you were going to do that.
Next week's already Christmas, and we're heading to the very end of 2025. And to help people unwind and enjoy the season, Seoul has prepared many enjoyable events, and I visited 2 of them myself just yesterday. So why don't you all follow me as I invite you to this magical world. Long lines, but no complaints. Only smiles and anticipation. People patiently wait near Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul, as if something magical is about to happen. As visitors pass through the entrance, the scene feels like stepping into a Christmas fairy tale. As soon as the sun goes down, the Christmas market lights turn on. Christmas is nearly here, and people are enjoying the Christmas vibe. The most popular spot is this 50-meter landmark Christmas tree, where people take nice pictures and make long-lasting memories with their loved ones. Inside the market, it's bustling with visitors, while hundreds of vendors sell everything from Christmas goods to local handmade items, including Rudolph-shaped candles, colorful wrapping cloths, and traditional lucky pouches. Photo spots are everywhere, like this merry-go-round, which is especially popular with families with children.
It really feels like Christmas and is such a nice experience. There's so much for the kids to enjoy: the merry-go-round, photo spots, and even small things to buy.
An interesting twist for them is that these shops change every week through the end of the month, giving visitors a magical chance to discover something new each time they come.
Winter is usually the off-season here, especially at night. But tourists still need things to see and enjoy after dark. That's why we created this, and we plan to expand it even further.
There are visitors from across the globe, such as European tourists, familiar with traditional Christmas markets back home.
We didn't realize that Christmas is quite so popular here. I certainly wasn't expecting to see a Christmas market. It's absolutely beautiful. The light show was fantastic. Everyone seems really happy.
As night falls, the lights become even more dazzling. And the celebration doesn't stop here. Just a short walk away, Cheonggyecheon Stream is glowing with its light festival, running through early January. The displays are made of Korean traditional paper hanji, featuring illuminated sculptures that blend tradition with modern design. One standout is the Pokemon character Magikarp, as it's gone viral on social media, drawing even more visitors. Together, the Gwanghwamun Market and Cheonggyecheon Light Festival have already attracted around 1.5 million visitors in just over a week. Due to high popularity, operating hours have recently been extended by around an hour, and this whole tourism organization now aims to welcome 6 million visitors this season. And thanks to all of that, downtown Seoul's winter nights are feeling much warmer, brighter, and just a little more magical than ever before.
Right, that sounds like a fun event. Now, one of the interviewees said this, but why is Christmas so popular here in South Korea?
Right, that's what I've been wondering as well. So Christmas markets have been, gaining popularity in recent years, and one expert explains what's behind the trend.
As cultural globalization grows, more people are becoming familiar with Christmas traditions, boosting the appeal of related events. And today, travel doesn't always mean going far, as everyday spaces can offer new cultural experiences close to home.
But he added that more can be done to make the market more welcoming to a wider audience.
To be more meaningful, markets need to go beyond shopping. Hands-on experiences, like games and food making, can turn visitors into active participants.
And he added that incorporating K-content, such as K-pop themes, could help create a Christmas market experience unique to Korea, especially for visitors from abroad.
Right, Kanu. And I heard there are more events in Seoul other than the ones you just showed us. Please do tell us more about them.
Yeah, absolutely. So more winter events kicked off just yesterday across the city. At Hangang River Parks, a new snow sled park has opened, running through mid-February. Locations include Yeouido in central Seoul and Tuksum in the east of the city. For details, viewers can check the website now as you see on the screen. There's also a large Christmas market near Tuksum Hangang Park, offering ornament-making activities and Christmas choir performances on Christmas Eve and also Christmas Day. And an outdoor ice rink opened today at Seoul Plaza, with admission costing less than $1. It's an affordable way to enjoy winter, especially if you're a big fan of ice skating. And I also want to recommend the New Year's Eve bell ringing ceremony at Bosinggak Pavilion, located in Jongno-gu District, downtown Seoul, where large crowds gather on the last day of each year to wait for the bell ringing 33 times at midnight just to welcome the new year.
Right, we do cover that live here from Arirang. And well, Kanu, hope you've been a good boy this year. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. And I hope you were also a good boy. I'm here as well.
I'm all right, I'm all right.
All right, have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
It was a cold start with sub-zero temperatures in several areas this morning. However, with warmer southern winds in the middle of the day, temperatures climbed up quickly. Seoul warmed up to 11 degrees Celsius today and it will be just as mild tomorrow. However, rain is forecast all over the country tomorrow, starting from the west early in the morning and spreading to eastern parts of the country. While not much rainfall is expected, with temperatures dropping on Sunday, there could be some icy roads. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start off at 9 degrees, Gwangju at 8 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 11 degrees in Seoul, just like today, 17 degrees in Daegu. The temperature in Seoul will plummet sharply to -5 degrees on Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all for this Friday evening. Hope you have a great weekend.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
Millennials and Gen Zs are reshaping the world. News Generation shares their fresh perspectives on what's trending now. From global developments to everyday culture, we're diving into the stories that matter. This is News Generation.
Knock knock! The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Poli Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Kabion by your side, you can become a Kabion master and save humanity like a total hero.
protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-Animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. As the year 2025 nears its end, Korea's economy is facing a convergence of pressures. Currently, currency instability, inflation uncertainty, and shifting trade dynamics. The won is weakening again, raising alarms beyond the financial markets. But this isn't just about numbers. It's about perception, timing, and policy decisions that could ripple far beyond the year end. In the United States, macro signals are sending mixed messages, while global markets are beginning to question whether the AI rally is sustainable. And with new trade shifts taking shape from Europe to North Africa, Korea's position in the global supply chain is once again being tested. So how should we read the moment we're actually in? For more on this, we connect to Kim Min-gyun, professor at Seoul Business School. A big welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And also joining us is Bae Sung-ho, professor of business administration at Kyungbuk National University. Good to see you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Right, so let's start a discussion with Professor Kim with the exchange rate first. So a couple of days ago, the won briefly broke 1480, the highest in 8 months, and it's now holding above 1470, and that's nearing a crisis era levels. Professor, what's behind this sharp rise?
Okay, if you look at the numbers, 1,481 per dollar, like it's the number that we see in the 1997 that we have a IMF financial crisis. But if you think about those kind of situation, well, there is a kind of global dollar strength, but in the Korean way, there is like an outflow of the won. Those are pressures, but I don't think it's not kind of just a one-time event. It's kind of very stable issues right now. So first of all, basically the dollar stay firm as U.S. economy grows and yields remain relatively strong. But on the other hand, like the investors, they're trying to, since dollar is very strong, they're trying to maintain the investment in the U.S. market in the dollars, but they're trying to become a seller in the Korean market. And indeed, well, basically, well, for the Korean situation, where we trying to make a lot of investment in abroad, basically, especially like MPS and our investors, well, they're trying to make investments with the U.S. market. So they spend up, they use a lot of dollars. So it's kind of like it's going to make some impact. Lastly, well, basically the won is weak and dollar is very strong, and most large companies in Korea, well, basically they export the products and they own the dollars. But after they own the dollars, of course, they maintain the dollars in their cash flow. They don't want to exchange those dollars into Korean won because basically, well, the market, like foreign exchange rate, is kind of very high. Well, those companies where they're trying to avoid those kind of risks in foreign exchange rate.
So all of these factors, they definitely put pressure on the policymakers going into the new year. Now, when we stay with the market movements, Korea's money supply in October hit a record of 4,470 trillion won, and some point to it as a reason for the weaker won, though the BOK strongly disagrees. Professor Bae, we wonder what's your opinion on that?
Yes, recently there's a growing concern in Korea about the sharp rise in the $1 exchange rate. And it's true that there are various opinions on the cause. Among them is the view that the increase in liquidity, specifically the sharp rise in M2 growth, has driven up the $1 rate. M2 has been growing around from 8% to 9% year on year since last summer, reaching roughly 4,480 trillion won in October, which is high relative to the Korea's sub 1% real growth.
The Bank of Korea's main argument on this as follows. First, the pace of M2 growth is at an average level compared to past rate cut periods, so it's not excessive. Second, funds that were outside M2 has flowed massively into M2 products like ETF beneficiary certificates. So there's a limit to viewing this as a fundamental increase in M2. The Bank of Korea argues that claims of excess liquidity driving house price surges and one weakness amount to overinterpretation, ignoring a range of key indicators. The Bank of Korea's statistical analysis and argument seem reasonable. However, statistics can always be used to support claims, so caution is needed. I still believe liquidity indicators remain important. Rapid M2 growth amplifies risk appetite and leveraging, which can indirectly weaken the currency by encouraging capital outflows and raising concerns about financial imbalances. High liquidity also limits the Bank of Korea's room to cut rates in response to weak growth, because losing further would risk asset price inflation and could deepen the perception that Korea is running an ultra-easy regime behind the weak one. Moreover, the Bank of Korea announced plans to revise its M2 compilation method to better reflect reality using international standards, which naturally shows lower liquidity post-change. I worry this metric overhaul might amplify market confusion or suspicion.
So with this situation, the thing important now is how the government would respond to this. It in fact has relaxed FX holding requirements for financial firms and is encouraging more foreign investment in Korean stocks. Professor Kim, do you think these measures would actually be quite helpful, and what else could be needed?
Well, the government is trying to do everything to, basically to make a lower, the higher one versus dollar value. But they're trying to do a lot of steps, but I think it's kind of like the fundamental issues that we have to solve, but I hope that it's going to work. First of all, they're trying to temporarily relax foreign exchange liquidity requirements so that banks, security firms, and insurers now face lighter supervisory pressure from the strength foreign exchange liquidity stress test until the end of June 2026. Basically, where they can deploy the part of their excess dollar holdings into the market. And second, basically, they have raised the forward foreign exchange position limit for foreign banks, subsidies from 75% of equity. The previous, the same domestic banks, they have up to 200%. While foreign banks branches keep their like a 375% capacity, they're gonna shoot attract additional foreign currency into the Korea so that they can expand the supply of hedging ON dollar liquidity. And finally, it plans to allow the exporters to use foreign exchange loans not only for the facility investment but also for domestic working capital. And then they can promote tools like omnibus equity account for the foreign investments. When firms borrow dollars and convert them into one for local use, they create the extra dollar selling using some depreciation pressures at the margin. Basically, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make, trying to attract more dollars into the Korean market so that we can ease on those kind of high foreign exchange rate. But I hope that fundamental issues have to be solved before it's going to be working on those kind of other issues.
So more backup policies would be necessary moving forward. Now, over in the United States, after delays from the government shutdown, key macro indicators like job and inflation are finally out. Professor Bae, how would you assess the state of the American economy based on those figures?
Yes, the United States economy shows clear sign of cooling with weak job growth and rising unemployment in November's data. Through inflation ticked up modestly to 2.7% year-over-year amid data gaps from the government shutdown. These delayed reports highlight labor market softening but persistent price pressures, suggesting a bumpy slowdown rather than recession. According to the job report, non-farm payroll rose by just 6,400 in November, below expectations, after distortions from federal buyout and the 43-day shutdown that skipped the full October data. Unemployment climbed to 4.6%, the highest since 2021, signaling hiring slowdowns across sectors. Regarding the CPI figures, headline CPI increased to 2.7% annually through November, with the core at 2.6%. Monthly gains were partial due to the resumed survey post-shutdown. However, concerns persist that this report data is distorted. The main reason October's United States job data was skewed stems from a 43-day federal government shutdown that halted data collection and processing, plus early retirement of 160,000 Treasury staff reflected as massive job losses. Household surveys weren't conducted at all during the shutdown, likely leaving unemployment figures entirely missing. So, full trust in these numbers compared to prior data has clear limits. But the recent report shows weak job growth and rising unemployment, signaling a cooling labor market. Inflation above the Fed's 2% target will likely constrain late costs despite growth worries.
And now we're kind of curious how this latest data reveals what it actually reveals about the policy direction. Professor Kim, how might this actually shape the Fed's timing and pace for rate cuts?
Basically, well, they already cut the rate to 3.5% to 3.75% this month. But well, if you look at the inflation rate, it's kind of 2.7%. Basically, their expectation was lower, basically. And they look at those kind of numbers, unemployment rate, 4.6%, and basically they become very cautious. What are you going to do, especially for the next years? So, well, even though they get a lot of pressure from the Trump government, basically they have to lower the interest rate, but they are very cautious to look at all those numbers and the economic situation, especially for the future, for the next years. Well, what they say is that they're going to have some projection, and they're trying to cut the rate maybe once or 2026, and they're trying to see those kind of numbers, and their stance is neutral. But well, who knows that the U.S. economy is kind of going, which way they're going to go, positive side or negative side. But I think they are very cautious to make a quick decision right now to make a bold prediction for the next years.
So this decision by the Fed, it's going to be a major variable heading into the first quarter of next year. Now, while we're talking about the United States, there's also growing chatter again about an AI bubble. Professor Bae, do you see this as a short-term sentiment or a sign of a deeper structural risk in the AI sector?
So I think this is a big question. Recent AI stock dips reflect more than fleeting sentiments. They signal structural risks in the sector, including sky-high valuations, massive unprofitable infrastructure spending, and overcapacity threats from uncertain demand forecast. While hype drives by the deep behavior, cracks like oracles that owes and lender caution point to a potential bubble beyond the temporary pullbacks. We can find the sign of investors' sentiment dips. Sharp drops in leading AI stocks like NVIDIA and SoftBank, over 10% each, along with waning retail investor buying frenzy are prime signals of this shift. Structural issues in AI persist too. Revenues stagnate outside the top players, and computing power models monopolized by a handful of firms, creating extreme concentration. Recent chatter links the AI bubble to the dot-com era. AI and the dot-com bubble share overheated valuations and tech hype. But AI stands apart with Lebanese generating firms, real demand, and infrastructure investment, unlike dot-com's unprofitable, fraud-driven collapse. Dot-com wiped out 75% of stock and triggered the recession, while AI's dominance by giants like NVIDIA offers better shock absorptions. Cautiously speaking, AI isn't as vulnerable as dot-com, but capex overinvestment and energy constraint could bring 2026 adjustment risk. Fed rate cuts might trigger a temporary rebound after dips, yet ongoing profitability does and infrastructure imbalances suggest limited correction next year.
So, in contrary to these AI sectors, Korea's chip makers actually, they seem to be moving in the opposite direction. Samsung and SK Hynix are expected to post record earnings. Professor Kim, what does that suggest about global demand and Korea's competitive position?
Basically, well, for this year's, I mean, the revenue for the Samsung and SK Hynix and the projection they're going to make in next year is basically we call it like a fantastic record. So even though like we're going to call it an AI bubble, but the SK Hynix just posted record current revenue of 24.4 trillion won and operating profit of the 11.4 trillion in Q3 in 2025. And of course, the Samsung, where they also have reported like 86.1 trillion won in Q3 in 2025 in revenue. Basically, I mean, the operating profit was 12.2 trillion won, basically it's the highest in years. Basically, in the HBM and DRAM and NAND, where basically their production plan, well, basically it's kind of the fulfill all their current capacity. And indeed, of course, for the next years, well, they basically their orders, especially for the SK Hynix, for the DRAM and NAND and HBM is kind of full right now. So basically, they're going to fulfill all this capacity so that they can maximize their profit or revenue until maybe 2026. So in terms of the competitive edge, like Korean semiconductor firms, where they are basically have the segment that AI needs most. So why they want to have those kind of advantage? Well, Samsung and SK Hynix, they control roughly half of the global high bandwidth memories, the HBM market. And SK Hynix, basically alone, they're going to say the high-end HBM3E and DDR5 products are driving profit margins, basically extraordinarily high with the utilization effectively maxed out for the next years. So basically, analysts are going to say, well, for the Q4 in 2024, and SK Hynix, basically, they're going to fully operating profit is going to jump close to 9% year-on-year. Basically, those two firms, basically, they're going to carry off the cost beat maybe this year and possibly for the next years. Those kind of leadership for the technology in the HBM3 or HBM4 and DM and NAND, basically much color visibility on orders from the US and other global hyperscalers on the rise, that they're going to recognize the Koreans, I mean, the two companies' strengths, and they're not going to have, they're not going to say it's like a bubble, but they're going to say this kind of the competitive advantage for those kind of the two companies, and they're going to establish, or they're going to need it for establish the infrastructure grade memory in the AI functions.
So despite the noise, the fundamentals still seem quite strong in key sectors. Now, before we conclude, let's also just touch upon trade. Korea and the UK just concluded an updated FTA easing origin rules for key exports such as cars and food. Professor Bae, how might this help Korean exporters and boost competitiveness?
Yes, the Korea-UK FTA upgrade concluded December 15th. Relaxes rules of origin, dropping auto value added threshold from 55% to 25% and easing them for food, processed goods, boosting Korean export by reducing tariffs on EVs, K-food such as kimchi, gimbap, and K-beauty. The main reason for this relaxation are threefold. First, the expiration of the EU cumulative preferential rules. Korean cars from Hyundai and Kia faced losing export eligibility to the UK after the existing FTA's EU provisions expired on December 31 this year, but this deal fixes that. Second, global supply chain crisis. High reliance on Chinese EV batteries and minerals made meetings the 55 value-added threshold impossible, so it drops to 25%, enabling continued export. Third, mutual benefits balance. Korea targets autos and K-food export, while the United Kingdom's eyes finance, gaming, and high-speed rail markets, especially aligning with the post-Brexit UK trade diversification. This relaxation benefit autos, food, and K-beauty industries most. Korea and the UK also expect stronger supply chain resilience through expanded AI and digital cooperation. However, risks include potential KTX tech leakage to the United Kingdom's high-speed rail markets, and moreover, feasibility issues with deregulating Korea's service sectors.
But generally, that could be a timely boost, especially for mid-sized exporters as well. And let's hope for more of these trade agreements in the coming year. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Bae.
Thank you.
And Professor Kim, for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.